Book 2. All faces now were fixed on him in silence. Father Aeneas spoke from his high couch. Must I renew a grief beyond description, telling how Greeks destroyed the power of Troy, that tear-stained kingdom, since I saw the worst and played a leading role? Telling the story, a Myrmidon, a Dolopian, a soldier of cruel Ulysses would shed tears. The moist night falls to its end, the setting stars urge sleep. But if you are so passionate to hear, briefly, of the death agony of Troy, I will begin, although my heart shrinks back from memory. The years of war had broken the Greek kings. Destiny had pushed them back. They built a mountainous horse, with woven ribs of fur. Athena's genius aided them. An offering for a safe voyage home, the news spread. They picked the bravest men. With stealth, they shut them into the darkness of the flanks, an armed squad filling the vast, deep cavern of the belly. Tenedos shows offshore, the famous island, wealthy while Priam's empire still existed. Now just an inlet with its treacherous mooring. They sailed there. On the lonely beach they lurked. We thought they'd made off windward to Mycenae. The whole of Troy broke free of its long mourning. We poured out through the open gates, delighted to tour the Greek camp on the empty shore. Achilles' tent was there, here the Dolopians. The fleet moored there, here was the battleground. Some ogled the huge horse, gift of the Virgin Minerva for our ruin. Thymoides was first to want to take it to our stronghold. His own guile or the fate of Troy inspired him. Capys, and those who shared his good sense, urged us to hurl the treacherous present of the Greeks into the sea, or set a fire beneath it, or drill into the secrets of its womb. The fickle mob took opposite positions. Now leading his attendants in a crowd, Glaucon rushed raging from the town's heights. "Poor Trojans, have you lost your minds?" he called. "You think they're gone? With no deceit the Greeks give presents? Don't you know Ulysses better? The Greeks are hiding in this wooden thing, or else this is a siege machine they've built for spying or alighting on our homes, or some such trick. Don't trust the horse, my people. Even when they bring gifts, I fear the Greeks." He hurled a massive spear with all his great strength into the creature's round and riveted belly. The shaft stuck, trembling, and that cave, that wound, gave out a groaning noise. Had heaven willed it, had we all been sane, we would have followed, shattering that Greek lair. Priam's high citadel would still be standing. Shepherds approached the king now, clamoring, dragging a youth whose hands were tied behind him, a stranger they had come across just now. But he had plotted it, to open Troy to the Greeks. He was tough-minded and quite ready to weave his lies or meet unyielding death. Trojan boys rushed to see the captive, crowding around him, seeing who could taunt him hardest. Hear how the Greek plot worked. This single crime shows them for what they all are. In the center of those stairs, unarmed and harried, he stood and swept his eyes around our ranks. "Is there some sea? Is there some soil to take me?" he cried. "I'm finished. What do I have left? No place among the Greeks, and now the Trojans, as well, are shouting for my blood in payment." At this our rage was calmed, our onslaught stifled. But still we had to know, who were his people? What was the news he brought? Why should we spare him? He finally put his fear aside and said, "All that I'm going to say, my king, is true, whatever happens. First, I am a Greek, Sinon. If fate has made me miserable, she will not make me lie, cruel as she is. Perhaps you've heard of the name of Palamedes, the glorious son of Belus, whom the Greeks falsely and quite outrageously accused of treason when he stood against the war. They drained his body of light, but mourn him now. My father, who was poor, sent me in boyhood to be his page. We were his relatives, while he still safely ruled, strong in the councils of kings. I had my share of reputation and honor. But when sly Ulysses' envy, you know it, thrust him from this upper world, I lived in mourning darkness, persecuted and furious at my blameless patron's death. I was in fact a fool, and pledged revenge if chance allowed, if I came home in triumph to Argos. Hatred rose against my words. This tripped me towards disaster. Now Ulysses kept threatening, accusing, scattering rumors, recruiting helpers in his plot against me. He didn't rest until the seer Calchas, But no, it's useless. You don't want to hear it. I'm wasting time. If Greeks are all the same, then kill me. I'm a Greek. The sons of Atreus would pay to see. Ulysses would be pleased. That only made us burn to hear it all. We didn't know the evil guile of Greeks. Shaking with false emotion, he went on. The Greeks were often yearning, often trying to leave. The endless war had worn them out. I wish they'd gone. The stormy winter sea or south wind often turned them from the journey. The maple horse was standing here already, when the sky rang with even louder storms. In doubt, we sent Eurypylus to query Apollo's oracle, and we got bad news. You Greeks appeased the winds with virgin blood when you first traveled to the shores of Troy. Now you must make an offering of a Greek life for your return. The common soldiers heard this with horror. Icy trembling seized their marrow. Whose death was it Apollo asked of them? Ulysses dragged old Calchas in, demanding, with noisy bustle, what the god decreed. Many foresaw the schemer's brutal crime. They saw what was to come, but held their peace. The seer in his tent refused for 10 days to give a name and send a man to death. Finally, driven by Ulysses' clamor, he spoke. They'd planned it. I would be the gift. They all agreed. Each, fearing death, was happy to see it land on my pathetic self. The ghastly day had come, the salted grain, fillets around my head, the ritual. From chains, from death I broke free, I confess it. In the swamp among the reeds I hid all night, breathlessly waiting for the fleet to sail. I can't return to see my homeland, sweet children, and the father that I yearn for. Perhaps they now may pay for my escape. It may be that my weakness cost their poor lives. I beg you by those powers that know the truth, by any pure trust placed in anything among us mortals, pity my affliction, pity the violation of a good heart. We spared his life, we even pitied him. First Priam had the manacles and tight chains removed and spoke these kind words to the captive. Stranger, forget the Greeks, now lost to you. You will be ours. But speak the truth to me. Who had the giant horse set up and why? Is it for worship or for making war? Greek cunning and conspiracy now caused him to raise his hands unfettered to the stars. By these eternal fires in sacred Troy, by the altar and the evil blade I fled, and the gods' ribbons that this victim wore, it's right to break my sworn bond to the Greeks, to hate them and make public everything they hide. My nation's laws don't hold me now, but keep your promises since Troy is saved, if this true news pays richly for my safety. All that the Greeks could hope for in this war was in the power of Pallas. Since the plotter Ulysses and the godless Diomedes slaughtered the keepers of the towering fortress and tore away that fateful effigy, the Palladium, from its shrine, and even pawed her virgin ribbons with their bloody fingers, the tide is turned, the Greek cause slipping backward. Their strength is broken by her stubborn anger. She gave us signs clear and miraculous. We'd scarcely set her image in the camp when its eyes flashed and burned, and salty sweat ran down it. From its base it leaped 3 times and shook its shield and spear. Strange sight, strange story. Calchas's divine advice, escape by sea. The Greeks would not raise Troy till they returned to Argos for new omens and brought back the deity they'd taken in their curved ships. They've sailed home to Mycenae to rearm and gather gods as allies. They will cross back here and strike. So Calchas read the omens. This statue pays for the Palladium, an offering to violated godhead. Calchas commanded that it be immense, a mass of jointed logs that would reach the sky, and never pass the gates into your city and save you, as the cult of Pallas did. Handle Minerva's gift impiously, then ruin. May the gods turn back the omen against the seer. We'll meet the realm of Priam. If your hands help it climb into your city, Asia can hurl itself in war against the walls of Pelops in our grandson's times. Sinon's false oaths and trickery convinced us. The tears that he contrived did what Achilles and Diomedes in 10 years of war, and 1,000 ships could not. They brought us down. Poor Trojans! Something still more horrible sprang up to fill our spirits with confusion. Glaucon, the chosen priest of Neptune, was at the altar slaughtering a large bull, when over the calm sea from Tenedos came 2 huge coiled snakes. Even now I shake. Breasting the waters, paired, they sought the beach. They reared among the waves, their blood-red crests towering, while their bellies trailed the surface. Their backs were flowing in enormous spirals. The salt foam roared, but now they reached dry land. Fire and blood were brimming from their eyes. Their quivering tongues were licking hissing mouths. And white with fear we ran. As if marched forward, they headed for Laocoon, but first each clasped one of his tiny sons, entangling the body, feeding on its pitiful limbs. Their father snatched a spear and ran to help. Both serpents caught him in their giant whorls. Their scaly length went twice around his waist and throat. Above him reared their heads and necks. He fought to rip apart the knotted forms. Their slime and poison-black drool soaked his fillets. His shrieks of agony rose to the sky, as when a bull escapes the altar, shedding the axe that was half buried in his neck. The snakes now ducked away, made for the temple of Triton's savage daughter in its high place, and at the statue's feet they hid beneath the round shield. Now a fresh terror twisted through our hearts. We all quaked, and some murmured that Laocoon deserved this for the hideous crime of striking the sacred wooden image with his spear. Take it where it belongs, beseech the power of the goddess. We cut the walls and opened up the city. Bare-legged work put rollers underneath its feet and tightened ropes around its neck. The Great Catastrophe climbed to the fortress, pregnant with arms. Young boys and girls around it sang hymns and touched the cables in their joy. It loomed into the middle of the town. Heroic walls of Ilium, the god's home, my country. 4 times in the gate itself it halted. Weapons clattered in its belly. We pushed on, blind with passion and distracted, and set the monster in our sacred stronghold. Cassandra spoke then, echoing the future, but by the god's will Troy would never listen. We wretches on our last day garlanded the temples of the gods all through the city. The heavens swung round, night leaped from the ocean to wrap the earth and sky, and Greek deceit in its great shadow. On the walls the Trojans sprawled, muffled in a deep exhausted sleep. Already the Greek fleet came in formation from Tenedos, through the moon's friendly silence to the familiar shore. And now the king's ship signaled with flame, and Sinon, in the shelter of heaven's brutal edicts, slipped the pine bolts and birthed the Greeks. The horse gaped to the sky. From its wooden cave the eager chieftain slid down the rope. Machaon first, Thassandrus, Sithenolis, cruel Ulysses, Acamas, Thoas, Neoptolemus, grandson of Peleus, and Menelaus, and Epeus, who had built this artifice. They swarmed a city sunk in wine and sleep, slaughtered the guards, opened the gates, and let their comrades in, uniting ranks as planned. It was the time when that first sweetest sleep, a gift from gods, slips into weary mortals. I saw a desolate Hector in my dreams, streaming with tears and black with dust and blood. His feet were swollen with the throngs that pierced them when he was dragged behind the chariot. How different from that Hector who returned wearing the plundered armor of Achilles, or hurled our Trojan shorches onto Greek ships. His beard was dirty, dried blood caked his hair. He had the many wounds he got defending his city's walls. And in that dream I wept and greeted that brave man with mournful words. Light of our country, truest hope of Troy, why were you gone so long? What shore has sent us this longed-for sight of you? So many died. Your city and its people are worn out with all their griefs. What undeserved disaster marred your calm face? What are these wounds I see? He took no notice of my empty questions, but sighing from his heart's depths only said, Child of the goddess, run, escape these flames. The walls are seized. Troy falls from its great height. Our king and land are gone now. If this right hand could have defended Troy, you would be safe. Troy hands its rights, its household gods to you. Take them to share your fate, and find the place for their high walls across the seas you'll wander. Then from the innermost shrine he brought the fillets, and powerful Vesta and her ceaseless fire. Confusion and distress spread through the fortress. My father's house was set far back and sheltered by trees, and yet the din kept growing clearer. The horror of the war was pushing forward. Startled from sleep, I scrambled to the rooftop and stood there, motionless and listening. It was like fire the raging south wind sends into the wheat, or torrents from a mountain. flattening crops, the flourishing work of oxen, and dragging forests headlong. On a high rock the shepherd stands and stares in bafflement. Here was plain evidence of the Greek plot. The fire topped the broad house of Deiphobus and brought it down. Eucaligons beside it had caught. Sigium's wide strait shone with red. The shouts of men, the ring of trumpets rose. Blindly, I seized my weapons, senselessly, but my heart burned to gather friends and rush to some high place. Rage, furor pitched my mind ahead. How beautiful to die in battle. Now Panthus, son of Othrys, priest of Phoebus of the citadel, dodged Greek spears, running panic to my door with holy emblems and our gods in their defeat, and with his little grandson. Where is the hardest fight, I asked, our strong point? Quickly he answered me, but with a groan. This is the last day, inescapable for our nation. Troy, the Trojans, and our glory are gone. Fierce Jupiter has given all this to Argos. Greeks are masters of these flames. Among us looms the horse and pours out soldiers. Sinon, in mocking triumph, sweeps a torch everywhere, and as many thousand others crowd at the gates as great Mycenae sent. In alleyways the spears are poised for ambush. A flashing line of sword points is prepared to murder us. Guards at the entrances scarcely put up an early blind resistance. The priest's words and the god's power, which I felt, drove me to burning battle. The grim furies, the roars and shouts that rose to heaven called me. I drew in comrades. Ripheus, Epidus, great warrior, emerged by moonlight. Demas, Hipponus, and Cerobus, Mygdon's son, strode with me. This young man had come to Troy in burning and deranged love for Cassandra to fight, as Priam's son-in-law, for Troy. Poor man, his promised bride had raved and warned him. He had not heard. And when I saw them come together ready for war, I urged them on. Come, are you burning to waste your courage, fighters, following me into a final clash? You see our fortune. All of the gods who kept this kingdom standing have left their shrines and altars. These are flames you fight for. Hurry, die in the dense combat. The beaten have one hope, to lose all hope. The young men's frenzy grew. Like plundering wolves whose ravening mouths drive them through black fog on a blind hunt, whose cubs with dry throats wait back in the lair, we kept on pressing forward through our armed enemies, straight through the city to certain death. The blackness swirled around us. Who could describe that night's catastrophes? What tears could show our agony in full? An empire, generations old, was falling. We saw unmoving bodies sprawled and scattered in houses, on the roads, on holy thresholds of God's homes. But not only Trojans paid the price in blood. New courage seized our hearts. Greeks in their victory fell. Ferocious grief, terror, and every kind of death enclosed us. Androgeus, with his large troop, was the first Greek to meet us. He mistook us for his allies and shouted out in this congenial way, Hurry, men, what's this dragging of your feet? Why hold back? All the rest are plundering Troy's flames. Did you just come from your tall ships? No reassuring answers came to him. Right then he knew he'd fallen among enemies. Stunned, he retreated from his words and us. Like someone on a brambly path who treads on a hidden snake and backs away in terror from the blue swollen neck, erect in rage, Androgeus backed up, trembling when he saw us. We swarmed around them with our own weapons, scattered and killed them. They were panicked in that strange place, so fortune blessed our very first endeavor. Cerebus was exuberant and shouted, Friends, we should take the road that fortune's favored at the beginning. There we'll find our safety. Let's put on this Greek armor, take these shields. A trick's as good as courage in a war, and here's our chance. He took the long-plumed helmet and shield with its fine blazon from Androgeus, and put them on, and belted on the Greek sword. Then Ripheus too, and Demas, and the others eagerly armed themselves with that fresh plunder. We went among the Greeks, beneath their god's power. In the thick dark we skirmished many times with Greeks, and we sent many down to Orcus. Many ran to their ships and the safe beaches. A truly craven few climbed back and hid in the familiar belly of the huge horse. No one should trust the gods against their will. Her hair down loose, the virgin daughter of Priam was dragged out of Minerva's shrine. She lifted her burning eyes to heaven, uselessly. her eyes because her tender hands were tied. Seeing this put Cerebus in a frenzy. He hurled his doomed self straight against her captors. We followed, rushing where the clash was densest. But now, from the high rooftop of the temple, Trojan spears overwhelmed us. Pitiful slaughter. Our plumes, our emblems turned us into Greeks. Roaring frustration at the young girl's rescue, the gathered Greeks attacked. Ferocious Ajax, Atreus' two sons, Pyrrhus with his army. And when a whirlwind breaks and sets the west wind against the south and the east that relishes driving dawn's horses. Woods roar, frothy Nereus rages, rousing the sea clear from its floor. Even the men we'd ambushed in night shadows, routing them, chasing them all through the city, emerged now, first to see through our disguise, and they could hear our language wasn't Greek. They swarmed us instantly. Cerobus fell first, at the altar of the goddess strong in warfare. Peneleus killed him. Rhipeus fell too. It was the god's will, though no other Trojan served justice better. Hipponus and Demus died on their country's spears. Apollo's emblem, that reverent Panthus wore, has no protection. By Troy's ashes, by the flames that took my people, I swear, in that collapse I shirked no fighting or other hazard. If my fate had been to fall, I would have earned it. I was stranded with Iphitus, heavy with old age, and Peleus, lame from a wound Ulysses had inflicted. We now heard shouts and ran to Priam's palace, where what we saw drove all the other battles and massacres in Troy to nothingness. Implacably, the Greeks attacked the building, crowding the door, their shields above their heads. Ladders gripped walls right at the doors. Feet struggled toward higher rungs. Left hands held shields in front for shelter. Right hands reached to seize the roof. The Trojans ripped up parapets and whole roofs for weapons of defense. They knew the end was coming. They would fight until it came. They rolled down gilded beams, the ornaments of generations. Others drew their swords and in a dense rank blocked the doors below. So now we burned to bring the palace help, to bring relief and new strength to the beaten. There was a hidden door that linked the two parts of Priam's house, remote and at the back. Andromache, poor thing, while Troy survived, went through there unattended to her in-laws, taking Astyanax to see his grandsire. This way I reached the rooftops, where the Trojans uselessly, pitiably hurled their weapons. A tower reached skyward, near a steep drop down. It was our lookout onto all of Troy, the Achaean camp, and all the ships of Greece. We battered it around its upper stories, where the joints were loose, and ripped from its high perch, shoving it over. In a swift collapse and roar, it skidded down. Over the Greek ranks it smashed, but others came. There was no pause of stones or other missiles. Pyrrhus stood in the gateway to the courtyard, exultant, glittering in his bronze armor. Just as a serpent fed on poison weeds emerges swollen from its winter burrow and sheds its skin and gleams, its youth renewed, and swirls its glossy length and rears its head toward the sun and darts its three-forked tongue. Huge Periphas and Achilles' squire and driver, Automedon, with the Syrian contingent, pressed up and hurled torches to the roof. Pyrrhus was at the front. He took an axe to smash the bronze-bound doors and tear their hinges, first hacking out a panel for a hole in the hard oak, a wide and gaping window. There was the house inside, with its long courtyard, the ancient king's and Priam's sanctuary, and on the threshold stood its armed defenders. Sounds of disaster and confusion echoed throughout the palace, with howls and lamentation of women. Shouting struck the golden stars. Terrified mothers roamed all through the mansion and clung to doorposts, pressing kisses on them. Strong as his father, Pyrrhus came on. Latches, guards couldn't hold him back. The battering ram made the door sway, unhinged, and topple forward. The Greeks broke murderously through. They killed the first defenders, swarmed in all the rooms. A foaming, storming river is far gentler, which roars out past its heaped-up banks' resistance. It hurtles swollen through the broad fields, sweeps herds and barns along. There I saw Atreus' sons at the door, and Neoptolemus in blood frenzy, and Hecuba, her 100 daughters, and Priam. whose blood-fouled altar flames that he had blessed. 50 bedrooms for a rich supply of grandsons, pillars that flaunted gold barbarian spoil. Everything fell. Where flames failed, Greeks laid hold. Perhaps you want to know how Priam died. He saw his city fallen, taken, gates torn open, and the enemy deep inside. On shaking shoulders he set armor, last worn decades ago, strapped on a useless sword, and rushed to die in crowds of hostile soldiers. Beneath high open heaven in his courtyard was a great altar. A primeval laurel leaned to embrace the household gods with shade. There Hecuba and the princes' wives were huddling, like doves that rush for refuge from a black storm, futilely and embracing effigies. The queen saw Priam in his youthful armor and said, "Poor husband, what insanity dressed you for war? Where are you hurrying? No such defenders, no such help is called for today, not even if my Hector lived. Retreat here, let this altar keep us all safe, or die with us." She took the old king's hand, and in that sacred place she sat him down. But look, the Trojan prince Polites ran from Pyrrhus' carnage, ducked through hostile spears. Down the long porch, across the empty courtyard, wounded, he fled. Pyrrhus in bloodlust followed, thrusting his spear, grasping beyond his reach. Before his father's face at last, Polites was brought down. Blood and life gushed out of him. Now Priam, though encircled by the slaughter, did not hold back from shouting in his fury. "If there is sight and conscience up in heaven, the gods will give you your deserved reward, their thanks for this outrageous crime, for letting me see with my own eyes my own son's murder. You have defiled a father's sight with death. Achilles was your father? It's a lie. This isn't how he fought. He had respect for a trusting suppliant's rights. He sent me back to my throne with Hector's corpse for burial." The old man threw a weak, unwarlike spear. All it could do was clang across the bronze shield and hang there, by the leather of the boss. Pyrrhus replied, "Then go tell Peleus' son, my father, how short of him I fall. Be sure he knows what hateful things I did. Now die." The king was dragged up to the altar, shaking and slipping in his own son's blood. A left hand gripped his hair, a right hand lifted a flashing sword and sank it to the hilt. As Priam watched Troy burn, its fortress topple, death took him, and his destiny reached its end. But he had once been haughty lord of Asia, its lands, its peoples. On the shore a tall corpse lies nameless, with its head ripped from its shoulders. That was the moment savage horror gripped me. I froze. I seemed to see my darling father in the brutally stabbed king. He was the same age, panting his life out. What about Creusa? Alone, my house tore open, little Iülus. I looked around to find some troops to help me. Deserters. In their terror and exhaustion, they jumped from walls or dashed into the flames. Now I was all alone there. No, I saw through Vesta's doorway, quiet, skulking, hidden, Tyndareus' daughter, in the glare that flames shed for my ranging feet and searching eyes. She feared the Trojans' vengeance for their city, justice from Greeks, and her deserted husband and his outrage. For both lands she was a fury. A loathsome thing, she crouched behind the altar. My heart caught fire. I had to punish her for crimes that had destroyed my fatherland. She'll safely gaze on Sparta and Mycenae, where she was born. She'll triumph as the queen. She'll see her father's home, her husband, children. Slaves will escort her, Trojan boys and ladies. Priam is butchered. Troy burns. All those times our shore has sweated blood. No, not for this. To execute a woman brings no glory. It is no triumph trailing praise behind it. Yet I'll destroy this evil, bring it justice. I will be praised. I'll satisfy my heart with flames of vengeance for my own who are dying. My ranting fury carried me along, when in pure brightness, through the night appeared my gentle mother, never clearer to me, revealing her divinity, the form she had in heaven. Her right hand restrained me. Out of her rosy mouth there came these words. "My child, what pain could bring on such wild anger? Why rave this way? Where is your love for us? Where have you left Anchises, your poor father, broken with age? Ascanius, Creusa, are they still living? Everywhere around them Greek forces mill. If not for my protection, the weapons and the flames would have consumed them. Give up your hatred of the lovely Helen and wicked Paris, since it is the gods who are so cruel, and topple wealthy Troy. Look, I will take away the whole black cloud that wraps around you mistily and dims your mortal sight. But have no fear, and do as I command. Have faith in me, your mother. Here, where you see a giant mass of rock, shattered and strewn in rippling dusty smoke, Neptune has smashed the walls with his great trident, and shaken and uprooted the whole city. Bloodthirsty Juno, girded with a sword, has gained the Scaean gate, and wildly calls her army from the ships. There, on the citadel, Athena flashes her ruthless Gorgon shield through burning cloud. Our father fills the Greeks with winning courage himself. He rouses gods against your troops. Stop struggling and lay hold of your escape. I'll take you safely to your household door. She hid away then in the night's thick mist. Before me stood grim shapes, great deities hostile to Troy. Truly, I saw the whole of Troy collapsing in flames, and Neptune's city overthrown, like an ancient mountain ash that several farmers hack with unresting axes in a contest to tear it loose. It menaces, its leaves tremble and dip when its high top is shaken. Wounds slowly weaken it. It gives the last groan, rips loose, drags devastation down the hillside. Some god then led me from the roof, released me from flames and weapons. All of these gave way. When I arrived at my ancestral house, seeking my father first, and keen to take him into the towering hills before the others, he said he could not live past Troy's extinction, would not bear exile. You, with youth unbroken, and hardy blood, and staunch and solid bodies, hurry, escape. If those above had wanted me to live, they would have saved my city. I've survived one captured, fallen Troy. It is enough. Say your farewell. This is my funeral. Some plunderer will show me mercy, ending my life. To lie unburied is a small loss. Uselessly, hated by the gods, I linger since heaven's father and the king of men blasted me with his fire and windy thunder. These were his stubborn words. He could not move. In tears we begged him, I, my wife Crusa, my son, and all our house, not to bring down everything with him, making our fate harder, but he refused, fixed in his plans in place. My wretched urge was war again and death. Nothing in life remained to me but these. Father, you thought that I would leave you here and run, such outrage from a father's mouth? If out of towering Troy the gods leave nothing, if you're resolved to give this dying city yourself and us, the door that stands open to Pyrrhus, soaked with Priam's blood, who kills the son, and then the father at the altar. Sweet mother, did you save me from the flames for war for this? The enemy in my home, my son, my father, and Crusa lying streaked in each other's blood like slaughtered cattle? My armor, bring it. We are not quite beaten. Let me go back to battle with the Greeks. Today we won't all die without revenge. Buckling my sword on, readying my shield in my left hand, I was about to go. But my wife, on the threshold, grasped my feet and thrust our son, our little Iulius, toward me. If you go out to die, then take us with you. But if you think you have some hope in weapons, then guard this house. To whom do you leave Iulus, your father and me, your wife, but soon your widow? Her words, her groans, her wails rang out through the house. But an amazing portent intervened. With Iulus in our arms, near our sad faces, we saw a filmy, radiant tongue of flame rise from his head. It licked his baby locks and browsed around his temples harmlessly. In our alarm, we tried to slap the fire out and soak the sacred burning of his hair. But Father Anchises gazed up toward the stars in joy, stretched out his hands, and spoke these words. Almighty Jupiter, Father, if prayer moves you, merely look down on us, for our devotion grant us a sky sign to affirm this omen. A sudden crashing roar rose on the left hand while the old man still spoke, and through the dark sky a comet hurtled with a dazzling tail. We saw it glide above the towering rooftops and hide its brilliance in the woods of Ida. Its tail still glowed, a long, light-brimming furrow. Its sulfur smoldered all over that country. My father rose up, conquered by the truth. In reverence for that sacred star, he prayed. No more delay. Gods of my fathers, lead me. I'll follow. Save my family, save my grandson. This was your sign, and Troy is in your power. And I will yield and go on with you, my son. Now through the walls the fire's roar grew louder. The blasts of heat were rolling closer to us. Dear Father, let them set you on my shoulders. I'll carry you. You will not weigh me down. Whatever happens, it will be one peril or rescue for us both. Our little Iülus will walk with me. My wife will follow far back. Servants, pay close attention to my orders. A barrow and an old deserted temple of Ceres lies outside the fort. Our fathers have long revered an ancient cypress near it. All of us will go separate ways and meet there. Father, you take our gods, these holy statues. Smeared with the fresh gore of a terrible battle, I must not touch them, but first be cleansed in running water. And now I pulled a tawny lion skin over my bending neck and brawny shoulders and took my load. My little Iülus's fingers were twined in mine. He trotted by my long steps. Behind me came my wife. We went our dark way. But before I hadn't minded the Greek spears hurled at me, or the Greeks in crowds attacking. Now every gust and rustle panicked me because of whom I led and whom I carried. Now I approached the gates. The journey seemed finished, when suddenly a massive tramping sounded. My father, spying through the shadows, shouted, "Run, run, my boy, they're coming close. I see shields flashing and the glint of bronze." Some enemy god then seized me in my terror and stole my reason. Byways led me running beyond the streets of the familiar city. And there my wife Creusa, was stolen by fate, or strayed, or else collapsed, exhausted. Who knows? We never saw her any more. I did not think of her or note her absence before we reached the mound and ancient shrine of Ceres. When we gathered there, we found her gone. Her husband, child, friends cheated of her. I spared no god or man in my wild curses. Nothing in that whole city's fall was crueler. I left my son, my father, and my gods in a twisted gully in the care of comrades. Bright in my weapons, I went back again, determined to run all those risks again. To risk my life in searching all of Troy. I now approached the walls, the gate's dim threshold that I had fled from, searching out my footprints, keenly in darkness, following them back. The very silence filled my heart with terror. I set out homeward. Maybe she had gone there. Maybe. The Greeks infested that whole building. It was all over. Flames, rolled by the wind, consumed the rooftop, shot insane heat skyward. I passed to Priam's palace and the fort. In the empty porch of Juno's sanctuary, Phoenix and grim Ulysses stood, assigned to guard the spoils, a heap of Trojan treasure torn from the flaming shrines, wine bowls of pure gold. The tables and the clothing of the gods were captured now. Mothers and children stood in long lines, terrified. I even dared to shout across the shadows, uselessly filling up the roads with grief, ceaselessly calling out Creusa's name. I went on, in my race to search the buildings, but the sad apparition of Creusa came to me, taller than the living woman. Shock choked my voice and stood my hair on end, but what she said was soothing to my soul. "Why do you rave and revel in this sorrow, sweet husband? It was by the will of heaven this came about. It is not right to take me. The king of high Olympus will not let you. In your long exile, you will plow a wide sea, clear to the west, where Tiber's Lydian water sweeps smoothly through rich fields of warriors. A prosperous kingdom and a royal wife are yours. So weep no longer, though you love me. I am a Trojan, Venus is your mother. I will not serve Greek matrons in the cities of arrogant Myrmidons and Dolopians. The gods' great mother keeps me on these shores. Farewell, cherish the child that we created." She left me, cutting short my words and weeping. I had so much to say, and faded off. 3 times I threw my arms around her neck, 3 times her image fled my useless hands, like weightless wind and dreams that flit away. When I rejoined my friends, the night was gone. It startled me to find how many more had streamed there. Mothers, men in their best years, young men, gathered pathetically for exile. They came from everywhere, supplied, resolved to sail with me to any land I chose. The dawn star rose past Ida's highest slopes and brought the day. The Greeks held every gate to the city. There was nothing left to help us. I picked my father up and sought the mountains.